In the year 2183, Earth's peaceful dawn was shattered by a message that no one could ignore. For decades, humans had stretched their reach beyond their home planet, quietly sending signals into the vast dark of space, hoping to find others in the universe. Then, one morning, the massive radio dishes at the Deep Space Network in Australia picked up something strange, an intricate pattern of signals, unlike anything ever seen before. The message was long and complex, filled with numbers and symbols that twisted and turned in rhythms that seemed almost alive. Scientists, mathematicians, and linguists gathered in the largest conference rooms, eyes glued to glowing screens as powerful AI systems worked feverishly to crack the code. Slowly, the pattern revealed itself. It was a declaration, but not one of friendship or peace. It was a warning. "You are now part of the sovereignty of Varnock," the message said, cold and firm. "Resistance is illogical. Compliance ensures survival." The words sent a ripple of shock across Earth's governments and civilians alike. News channels exploded with speculation and fear. Who were the Varnock? What did they want? And what did compliance really mean? Across the world, leaders held emergency meetings while ordinary people looked up at the sky with new, uneasy eyes. Then, satellites far above Earth detected movement. Massive ships, hundreds in number, slowly crossing into the solar system, blocking out stars as they moved. These were no explorers. They were warships, sharp and gray, stretching from Mercury's orbit all the way past Jupiter's moons. It was the arrival of a force that had never before been seen so close to Earth. And the message that came with it was clear: surrender or be destroyed. Panic spread, but beneath it, a fierce determination took root. Humanity had survived its own brutal past, world wars, natural disasters, even near extinction, and it would not bow without a fight. At the same time, experts debated the best response. Military commanders pushed for defense, diplomats called for peace talks, and scientists proposed something no one had expected: a reply. But not just any reply, one crafted with the greatest care, designed to show the Varnock what humanity was truly capable of. The message was simple yet profound, sent through narrow beams of light across the void, carrying a single line meant to unsettle. We are peaceful, until we are not. As the fleet loomed closer, all eyes watched the space between stars, waiting for the answer to come, whether it would be an attack or something no one had dared to hope for. Silence. The silence that followed Earth's cryptic message was heavier than any noise, stretching across the void like a thick fog that refused to lift. The enormous Varnock fleet, which had been steadily advancing through the solar system, suddenly came to a halt. Thousands of warships hung motionless between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, their dark hulls reflecting faint starlight as if frozen in time. On Earth, the tension was unbearable. Military officers stared at their screens, waiting for signs of attack, but nothing came. Days passed, and still, the fleet remained silent. Scientists and diplomats waited anxiously for a response, but the void gave back only the emptiness of space. Then, an unexpected transmission pierced the quiet, a series of garbled signals from the Varnock flagship, bouncing erratically across the spectrum. Earth's AI translators worked overtime, struggling to make sense of the noise, but when the message finally cleared, the content stunned everyone. The voice of Admiral Kael'thas, the Varnock commander, carried doubt and confusion unheard of in such a powerful leader. "Is this true? This cannot be accurate. There must be an error. Send a diplomatic probe. We require confirmation." The calm authority that had defined the Varnock was replaced by hesitation. The silence that followed the Varnock's initial warning had cracked, and now uncertainty filled the void. Back on Earth, the strategic defense think tank, known only as Helix 9, had prepared for this moment. They sent an encrypted data packet attached to the reply, a vast archive of human history, showing wars, survival, and determination. No words explained it all, only images and sounds, a story told through visual memory of what humanity had endured. The Varnock probe intercepted this file and relayed it back to the fleet. As the images unfolded aboard the flagship, Every commander and soldier saw battles that seemed endless, a species that never surrendered even in the darkest times. Scenes of devastation were followed by acts of kindness, a child sharing food, in a ruined city, strangers helping each other in chaos, people rising again and again. The message from Earth was clear. They were not a people to be conquered easily. For the first time, the Varnock officers questioned what they had believed for centuries. How could a young species, barely reaching the stars, show such strength and resilience? What strange fire burned in the heart of humanity that could stop a fleet built to dominate? Earth waited, breath held, as days turned into a week. The Varnock fleet stayed silent, their commanders divided and confused. The silence was broken only by whispers, strategic debates and fears that rippled through the warships. Back on Earth, the world watched, united by hope and fear, as the fate of humanity hung on the edge of a response that could mean survival or destruction. Then, the transmission came again, this time a single line that echoed through Earth's communication centers. "We will send a diplomatic envoy. Prepare for dialogue." The words were unexpected and fragile, a door opening in the darkest night. The Varnock had paused, not out of weakness, but from a shock no one had foreseen, an ancient, silent respect for a species that spoke not just with weapons, but with a message that reached beyond war. The story of Earth had stunned an empire, and the universe waited, holding its breath, for what came next. The diplomatic envoy arrived in silence, a small, sleek ship cutting through the cold emptiness between Earth and the waiting Varnock fleet. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, thick with questions no one dared voice aloud. On the Varnock flagship, Admiral Kelthus prepared to meet representatives of the species that had so boldly stopped an empire known for crushing worlds without hesitation. The humans aboard the envoy were calm but alert, carrying with them more than words. They carried the full weight of a history the galaxy had never seen. As the two sides exchanged greetings, the humans revealed a hidden truth, something carefully preserved beneath the surface of their peaceful words and simple message, a vast archive of human struggle, resilience, and unyielding spirit. The Varnock watched in stunned silence as images played across their hollow screens, scenes of battles that scarred Earth's past, where humanity faced extinction and rose again each time. They saw trenches from the Great Wars, cities burning from nuclear fire, and the determination of people fighting not for conquest, but for survival. Yet amid the destruction, there were moments of unexpected beauty, children laughing in ruined streets, strangers sharing what little food they had, communities rebuilding from ashes with hope stronger than steel. The humans explained that this was their true power, the ability to endure the worst and still choose to stand, to adapt and to fight back when pushed beyond limits. Kelthus listened, his pride battling with disbelief. He had conquered hundreds of civilizations, each falling before the might of the Varnock Empire, but none had shown this strange mixture of peace and fierce defiance. The phrase they had sent, "We are peaceful until we are not," was not a threat. It was a warning rooted in their history, a promise shaped by countless trials. The Varnock commanders debated fiercely among themselves, torn between fear and respect for this tenacious species. The humans had not attacked, yet their message was louder than any weapon. It spoke of a fire that could not be quenched, a spirit that refused to break. Outside the meeting halls, the Varnock fleet remained suspended in quiet uncertainty, their usual confidence shaken by something intangible but powerful. For the first time, the Empire faced a question it could not answer. Could a species so young, so full of contradictions, really be more dangerous than their fleets? The envoy's revelation cast a long shadow over the cold logic of the Varnock, making them realize that Earth was not just a planet to conquer, but a force that might change the fate of the galaxy itself. The moment the human envoy's revelations spread through the Varnock fleet, an unseen fracture began to crack open the once united command, turning strength into tension and certainty into doubt. The Varnock Empire, known for its iron rule and ruthless conquest, now faced an enemy it could neither easily predict nor simply destroy. Within the great halls of the flagship, debates raged like storms. On one side stood those who had long served, The Empire with unwavering loyalty. Seasoned commanders who believed in swift, brutal action. They saw Earth's message in history as nothing more than clever tactics, a desperate attempt to mask weakness that must be crushed before it could grow into rebellion. To them, the humans' endurance was a challenge to the Empire's pride, and the only answer was total domination. On the other side were the skeptics, those who had studied the data closely and felt a creeping unease. They saw a species whose will had been forged in fire and loss, a race that had survived the unthinkable and might yet survive the Varnak's fiercest weapons. These commanders argued for caution, advocating withdrawal from the solar system to reassess and gather more intelligence. They believed the humans were not just another prey to be conquered, but a puzzle that could change the very nature of war and peace in the galaxy. The division spread beyond the council rooms, infecting the minds of captains and soldiers throughout the fleet. Rumors whispered in the corridors, and alliances shifted as fear and respect battled for dominance. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the Strategic Defense think tank, Helix 9, monitored the turmoil with grim satisfaction. They had anticipated this reaction and activated Protocol Obsidian, a secret plan long kept from the public. Hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings was a black site station, armed not with weapons designed for destruction, but with technology built to disrupt and confuse. The humans were prepared to fight not only with firepower but with cunning, using information as a weapon that could cripple the Varnak's advanced AI systems and break their cohesion. As the Varnak subfleet moved to intercept the station and silence Earth's resistance, the first wave of human countermeasures launched. Tiny, uncrewed vessels carried data bombs, packets of code and knowledge so alien and complex they could cause enemy machines to malfunction. The battle that followed was unlike any other, fought not with lasers or missiles but with ideas and information. Ships stopped responding, their systems caught in endless loops of error. Chaos rippled through the fleet as confusion replaced command. The Varnak, for the first time in centuries, faced an enemy who did not just resist, they fought with unpredictable minds and hearts. In this moment of crisis, the divide within the Empire deepened. Some commanders called for retreat, their belief in conquest shaken by the humans' strange power. Others demanded escalation, unwilling to accept that a single world could challenge their dominion. The fate of the fleet, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in the balance as the Varnak struggled to decide whether Earth was a threat to be destroyed or a force to be reckoned with. The clash between Earth and the Varnak Empire had moved far beyond traditional battles of ships and weapons. It had become a war fought deep inside the machines, in the silent language of data and code, and in the fierce willpower of two very different species. The information bombs unleashed by humanity wrought havoc on the Varnak fleet's systems, causing confusion that spread like wildfire through the networked warships. On board countless vessels, AI cores spiraled into recursive loops, losing their ability to process commands. Systems once flawless now faltered, turning weapons against their own allies or shutting down entirely. The fleet, which had seemed unstoppable moments before, was suddenly crippled by an enemy that fought not just with firepower, but with intellect and unpredictability. Admiral Kael'thas, watching the chaos unfold from the command bridge of the flagship, found himself faced with a crisis that no training had prepared him for. His orders to crush Earth were now impossible to carry out without risking his own fleet's destruction from within. The invincible empire was cracking at the seams. With grim resolve, Kael'thas sent out a ceasefire request, hoping to buy time to understand the enemy who had so thoroughly unsettled him. But Earth, confident in its position and unwilling to show weakness, ignored the plea. Instead, they sent a new message, clear, sharp, and filled with warning. "You invaded a world that builds warriors from hardship," it said. "You woke something ancient in our blood. Turn back, or let us show you what Earth does when cornered." The words carried a weight far heavier than any missile, striking deep into the hearts of those who heard them. Kael'thas sat alone in his chamber later that day, watching a video transmission that had been sent along with the message. It showed a single human child standing amid the ruins of a once great city, extending food to a stranger, an act of kindness in the face of destruction. Then came the voiceover. We don't conquer. We endure. We adapt. And when you burn our homes, we become fire. The fleet's commanders were torn between fear and awe. The humans were not invincible, but their spirit was a weapon that burned brighter than any star. The Varnock fleet began a slow, reluctant retreat. What had started as an invasion now felt like a retreat before a force more profound than any army, an unyielding will that refused to be broken. Earth did not celebrate this victory with fanfare or parades. Instead, its people watched the darkening skies, knowing that this was only the beginning of a long struggle. But in that moment, a truth was clear. The empire that had once sought to crush humanity now faced a lesson in resilience unlike any other. The empire was cracking, and the world that had seemed small and fragile was proving it could stand as fire in the face of destruction. The Varnock fleet's retreat sent ripples far beyond the quiet void of the solar system, reaching all the way back to the ancient capital world of the empire, where the ruling council awaited the fate of their conquest with cold, sharp eyes. Admiral Kael'thas returned not as a triumphant conqueror, but as a man burdened with questions that no victories could answer. His arrival was met with silence, a silence that spoke louder than any words. Before the Emperor, Kael'thas recounted the story of Earth, a planet that defied destruction not through overwhelming force, but through an unbreakable spirit, a race that had survived horrors beyond imagination, and yet chose kindness in the ruins. He showed the Emperor the data, the images, and the messages that had shaken the Varnock to their core. The Emperor listened, his expression unreadable, weighing the tales of a world so different from the countless others the Empire had subdued. Then, with a voice that echoed through the great hall, the Emperor pronounced a decision that would change the Empire's path forever. They are not prey. They are proof. Proof that strength was not only measured in weapons or numbers, but in will and heart. From that moment, the Varnock ceased all expansion. The fleets once poised for war were recalled, and the Empire began to rewrite its history, not as a tale of endless conquest, but as a story tempered by respect for a species that had challenged the very idea of domination. Earth was classified differently in the Imperial Archives. Species 992, Terran, Homo sapiens, marked as unassimilable, to be observed and engaged only through diplomacy. The decision sent shockwaves through the Council and the fleets alike, fracturing old beliefs and sowing seeds of change. Back on Earth, there was no celebration. The people understood that peace was fragile and that the galaxy was vast and unpredictable. Yet, in every quiet corner, there was a new sense of hope, a recognition that humanity's voice had reached the stars and had been heard. The message sent in those tense days, simple, strong, and true, had done more than halt an empire. It had reshaped a future. And somewhere, far beyond the edges of known space, the Varnock watched and learned, forever changed by a world that chose to endure, to fight, and ultimately to be heard.